welcome to Elden, Pueblo. It sits at the base of Mount Elden, which it's named for, at the beautiful San Francisco Peaks in Flagstaff, Arizona. And today your lesson is about investigating shelters, learning about observation, evidence, and inference. Today we're going to discuss how archaeologists use these to understand how the Sinagua culture built and lived in Puebloan shelters like this. This Pueblo has 60 ground floor rooms built by the Sinagua culture who lived here from AD 1080 to 1275. It began as scattered pit house villages almost 1,000 years ago and expanded into masonry pueblos as the population grew. So the Hopi descendants of the Sinagua culture call this place Pasiawi, which means the place of coming together. Right now I'm standing in the largest room of the Pueblo, which we call the community room, and it was used for large gatherings. The Pueblo contains over 45 smaller room blocks constructed as a series of rooms during a single construction event, suggesting new family groups moving into the neighborhood. It also has 2 kivas where religious ceremonies and rituals were held. There is a large plaza on the north side that served as an outdoor community work area for cooking food and making pots, baskets, clothes, and tools. Ash and charcoal found in the plaza area provide evidence of where cooking occurred, and we can determine what stone tools and pottery the Sinagua made and traded from excavations of trash mounds where artifacts were discarded. So just like the modern-day Hopi tribe, the Sinagua people would have traced their ancestry through their mother's side of the family, making it a matrilineal society. This means that women owned, built, and maintained the walls of their room blocks. But how exactly do we know this? Hopi cultural accounts identify these lifeway traditions that are still in use today. Archaeologists combine this information with artifactual evidence to reach scientific conclusions about ancient societies. Oral tribal traditions often support the archaeological record. So through observation, we can see that the Sinagua used really large stones for their exterior walls and smaller stones for the interior walls. What exactly does this imply? Well, it implies that the exterior walls held most of the weight load from the roof. They were load-bearing walls. The interior walls were thinner, and they really just acted as room dividers. Why were the entrances in the roofs? Well, part of this reasoning was for security, protection, and insulation, and roof vents allowed smoke to escape from fires used for warmth and cooking inside the room blocks. The walls of the Pueblo have 2 courses of rock with a rubble fill held together with a unique gold-colored clay found in deposits located at the south end of the site. Basins found in the activity areas contained the gold clay residue where mortar was mixed. The rocks are volcanic basalt and dacite from Mount Elden, which shows they used the resources at hand. Different masonry styles demonstrate a series of construction episodes. So here at the corners of the Pueblo, we can observe multiple layers of coursed stones interlocking to form a right angle at the corner, and this indicates that these 2 walls were built at the same time. On the other hand, interior walls formed abutments to the exterior walls, indicating a separate building sequence. So most of the rooms here at Elden Pueblo were only 1 story high, but some of them were 2. The way we estimate how high a wall was is we look at the remnant of that wall, and if it sits about waist high on an average adult, it was 1 story high. But if it's about shoulder height on an adult, it was probably 2 stories high. The way we estimate the size of a collapsed wall is we look at the size of the rock pile next to it. So why would the Sinagua build a Pueblo here? Well, this location is perfectly situated in a rain shadow at the base of Mount Elden. This area has a specific climate that is warmer and wetter than surrounding areas. The local weather pattern circumvents the Pueblo area, so rain falls around the site more so than directly on it. This results in water coming down the washes around the Pueblo, which is great for farming. So, do you see any other natural resources around me? While the Sinagua used local rocks and the gold clay that we talked about earlier to build their rock walls, they also used ponderosa pine trees, where they cut them down and used the trunks to lay over the tops of the rock walls to form a flat, sturdy, thick roof. These tree trunks were layered with smaller branches, mud, and grasses to create a flat, usable workspace as well as a roof. And this provided insulation to keep people dry and warm. So beside me is a special bedrock boulder that was used for grinding. And while most of these grinding stones are used to process food, archaeologists actually uncovered evidence to suggest that this stone was used to grind something other than seeds. A nearby room contained 5 stone axe heads that fit perfectly in these divots. Can you imagine all the time and effort it would take to grind an axe, cut the tree down, lay it across the roof, and build the Pueblo? Tree stumps and cut tree trunks from the site help archaeologists date the construction phases of the Pueblo. This is called dendrochronology, or tree ring dating, where they analyze the annual tree rings that track climate change through history. Narrow rings show dry years, and wider rings show years with plenty of rainfall. By matching thousands of samples of ancient wood across a wide region, this tracking of climatic sequence goes back 2,000 years, dating building periods and occupation from whenever the tree is cut down. This dating technique provides a great inference timeline for archaeologists on thousands of sites across the world. So here we have a Kiva. This was an underground ceremonial room common to all ancient Puebloan groups in the Southwest. They are primarily used by men, and most Anasazi Kivas to the east are circular, but Sinagua Kivas are rectangular. They always contain a north bench and are always subterranean.
Hi, Lisa. What are you doing over there?
I'm excavating.
Excavating? What's that? What's that funny-looking shovel you have?
Excavating is when you peel back the layers of the earth 1 centimeter at a time to learn the story of how the people lived in the past. This is called a trowel, and it's not really a shovel because I scrape with the side instead of digging into the ground. And look, I found a pottery sherd. This can help tell the story of the people in the past. And look, here's a piece of sandstone that might have been used by the people. We have to make sure we measure everything out very carefully so we know where everything was found to help recreate the story of the past.
Wow, I can't wait to learn more about Elden Pueblo. Neat.
So when we excavate a Pueblo room, we dig down in layers, usually 10 centimeters, and we look for artifacts and changes in the soil that represent distinct levels of time. This is called stratigraphy, and generally lower layers are older than the upper layers. This creates a geologic timeline from which cultural changes can be inferred from artifact accumulation. These stratigraphic layers can contain the collapsed roof, side posts, and trash fill to the cultural floor, which can additionally contain animal bones, plant remains, pottery sherds, projectile points, and grinding stones. Below that main floor may be an earlier hearth or refuse layer. We've identified 41 pit houses scattered around the site. A pit house is a dwelling structure dug partially or mostly into the ground, lined with rocks or clay plaster, with a roof frame supported by posts set into the floor and a central entry hatchway to the east. So pit houses were the earliest structures built here on this site, but they were also used contiguously during the Puebloan occupation. It's not uncommon to find Pueblo room blocks built over the tops of earlier abandoned pit houses. Here we have a smaller multi-room structure, Pueblo 2, which is a separate structure from the main Pueblo. It was constructed about AD 1250 near the end of the occupation period when the Pueblo experienced an influx of people. Why wasn't this 2-story Pueblo constructed as part of the main Pueblo? Could it have sheltered a new family group or clan integrating into the community? This Pueblo has its own separate Kiva, which might suggest this building was for a separate family unit. We know from available tree ring dating sequences that this area was experiencing a drought around AD 1250 when new populations were moving into the Pueblo. Now, a drought would put environmental strain on available food resources, but maybe these new members of the community offered a specialized skill or knowledge that could benefit the entire Pueblo. All we can say with certainty is that when Elden Pueblo was abandoned around AD 1275, the inhabitants left never to return. Hopi descendants still come back to the Pueblo for prayers and offerings to their ancient relatives. Thank you for joining me today here at Elden, Pueblo, and our lesson about ancient shelters. After you've shared this lesson with your students, please come join us for a class field trip. Elden Pueblo offers 3 outdoor archaeology-based programs on excavation, artifact analysis, hunting games, and general learning about the lifeways of the Sinagua. Come observe this pueblo firsthand to learn more about archaeological evidence that tell us how the Sinagua people lived here at Elden Pueblo.